Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. I'm Zach, and I, of course, have Matt here with me. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy day, just like yourself, and now we get the relaxing part of the day where we get to talk snakes and meet new people in this hobby.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to today. As you said, we did a little bit talking before the show, but crazy day of teaching. I haven't gone home yet, and I'm going to be here through the evening, but this is the part I've been looking forward to the most. So as far as new things since the last time we talked with respective collections here at the university, we've had 15 more false water cobras hatch in the never-ending river of false water cobras that we have here at West Liberty University. That's part of a graduate student's thesis. So those have all been weighed and measured, and that particular project's ripping and roaring. And we have some results that are going to be really interesting for people, I think. But other than that, there's not really anything new here. The animals that you sent me, the beak snakes and the tricolor, are definitely settled in. They've all eaten at least twice, and there's actually fuzzies in. I keep those in my office here. Fuzzies in their tubs, and I'm going to check before I leave. But that might be their third meal. So,
oh wow,
yeah, we're definitely off to the races with those. But no, semester has started, and I'm trying to keep my head above water. And this is our fun time. So, anywho, what's new with you?
Let's see. We hatched out another clutch of Cape files, another
Awesome.
clutch of Forest files, and then yesterday I went down to check in on some pairings, and I found a male Forest file halfway down the throat of a female, which always kind of it's a little rough, but you know that's part of the game you play when you breed snakes that have an appetite for other reptiles, and without going down that road, I mean, obviously we wouldn't have captive-born animals, respectively, of those species, which may actually be partly why I'm typically high male on some of those clutches, too.
Yeah.
Thinking about natural selection.
Gotcha.
But that's been about it. Nothing too crazy. Obviously, winding the end of the year up with some of these clutches, so turning off incubators as I go, and just getting animals established.
Yeah, that's definitely where I'm at is getting the animals established. The Japanese rats that we talked about in our first episode that had hatched. Some people talk about Clemacophora being difficult to get eating, but I've been fortunate. 2 of the 3 have eaten now. I have one that's being stubborn. He's probably a day or 2 away from his first mouse tail. Just to get him going. But yeah, we've been fortunate this year at West Liberty. I think we're sitting at about, we've hatched between 80 and 100 snakes. So it's not like a giant number, but it's certainly not a small number. And we're not really running into any kind of issues with getting our babies eating. Last year we had lots of issues getting our babies eating. This year, not so much. So good to go. You're still, though, in Baby Town with hundreds of babies? Is that like an accurate statement? Or
it's been interesting. You know, obviously, there's been a lack of imports coming into the U.S. And to be honest, I think that's actually good because it kind of brings about the fact that we really need to focus on establishing a number of these species in the hobby. That being said, I mean, as animals have been getting established, we've had quite the response towards some of those different species to actually acquire and add to personal collections. But still, with that even said, you know, even shipping animals, getting them to new homes, sometimes you'll get customers or collectors that they'll have questions respective of, well, this animal isn't feeding, how did you feed it, things of that nature. And it's amazing to me how many times I've told people to do the washing of the pinkies with just Dawn dish soap. And every person that had an issue after washing their pinks, they've all fed on frozen thawed pinks.
Really interesting.
So it really kind of brings up some of the different aspects. I always wonder about just the urine scent on pinkies, or even just the smell of defrosting, refreezing, just in the, not from the individual keeper doing that in their own personal collection, but relative to the industry standards of, because a lot of these rodents that are available, they may not even be personally bred by those companies. They could be commercial livestock animals that are used in animal testing model facilities. They're just surplus. And obviously they exchange hands multiple times. And, if there's any sort of urine on that animal, freezing it is just not going to help.
No, you're definitely just, all that waste and feces. It's just like the second it died. It's loaded with it. So, yeah, I've thought about that stuff as well. I've often wondered if people actually handling the pinkies, if you're using your physical hands, ungloved hands, if we're applying our scent and our oils and our, chemical cues, and that might be what's going on. Because I have absolutely, like you said, and we talked about with Clint last time, I've tried to feed animals, and it's weird. A great example, I've got some Mexican hognose snakes at home, and they were really sporadic in their eating. Sometimes they would take them right off the forceps. Other times they wouldn't. And I've noticed with those animals, and it could just be dumb luck, I could be barking up the wrong tree, but if I touch those mice at any point in the process, my males will not eat them. But if I literally pull them out of the bag in the freezer with forceps or with latex gloves on, and they never make physical contact with me, they'll eat them. So I apparently stink or something. I don't know what the hell's going on that front, but
just have that natural oil just to contribute to it. Huh?
Mm-hmm. But that's an animal that Kennerly does eat rodents in the wild, but they're also, when they're that size, they're feeding almost entirely on herps. So it's, you're presenting it with an item that's not its primary forage, and it's now got this weird smell of a giant naked ape, and what the hell is going on? I could totally see why in its little world it sees that mouse and thinks I'm not eating this. This is not copacetic. Whereas the king snakes, I had some tilapia left over from the garters, and I'm playing this great game with the kings, which is just what will it eat? So I've noticed I haven't found anything that my Eastern king won't eat. It's eaten chicken wings. It's eaten tilapia chunks. It's eaten rosy reds, every type of rodent, quail, chicken, whatever. So yeah, no. So you've got this weird spectrum going on there. So
you just need to quit defrosting pinkies in your pants pocket before you go into the snake room.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And well, the way I defrost them here at school, I did it actually earlier today, is I'll just go up to our freezer and I put them in my hand, and then I have my hand closed, and then I walk down to my office, and a couple of the professors know, if Zach's walking around with a fist, he's not angry, he's just got dead mice in there. So anyway, so but I digress on that moment. So yeah, are we ready to get rocking and rolling here?
Sure.
You think?
Yep.
I think we're ready.
All right, cool. So our guest tonight is Jennifer Joseph, and I believe that we are the first people to have you on a podcast. Is that correct?
That would be correct, which,
yes.
So, I'm a dinosaur, so it took a little bit of, I figured this all out myself. I'm quite happy about it. So,
Well, I've known Jennifer for a little while now. Many people know Jennifer for her work with various species of Pituophis, primarily bull snakes, but she also keeps many of the rarer forms of Pituophis, which we will talk about here in a minute. Gophers, pine snakes, Jani, all those guys have been part of her collection at one time. I reached out to Jennifer because at the university, we were trying to acquire a collection of bull snakes for an experiment where we were going to be looking at stress hormones, and we needed an animal that would go to the bathroom a lot, that wasn't a false water cobra, and was a big colubrid that would give us nice big samples. You know what I'm saying? And bull snakes came to mind immediately. And when I reached out to Jennifer, she was gracious enough to donate several animals to the university. And then through that, I communicated with her and realized that we have very similar interests. And she also has interests that are similar to Matt's, in that she keeps, in addition to the Pituophis, several what we would claim to be oddball colubrid species as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight with Jennifer. But we kind of have our set questions now. We're starting to get into a groove here. So our first question for you tonight, Jennifer, is how did you get your start in reptiles? What started this obsession?
Always liked invertebrates, always liked reptiles. If it swam or crawled or hopped or croaked or whatnot, I liked it. And this was a source of great consternation to my mother, who had 3 boys before me and was, yay, a girl. And I was much worse than all of them about bringing things in. And, you can't keep that toad. Well, the toad would go in the music box, and this is when I was 5 or 6. But first herps I kept were frogs, just, Sierra tree frogs, Sierra Nevada tree frogs, or Pacific tree frogs, or whatever their current common name is. I always called them Pacific, but I think they've been renamed again. And, every ditch, you can go climb around in the ditch and with a bucket and catch tadpoles and frogs. And I'm fortunately not prone to poison oak, so I brought everything home. First snake I was 6 years old, and I snuck a garter snake in the house. And my father didn't like snakes. My mother was terrified of them. It promptly got loose. It was found, astonishingly, and looking back on it, I can't believe that it was located in the house. And they set it up in an aquarium outside, under the deck, out of the sun. And you have to pardon my voice; it's been going in and out. And so then I was getting up at 6 a.m. and sneaking out in bare feet to visit my snake. And at which point they said, fine, bring it in. And we went to the pet store and got an aquarium that, my father, being an engineer, made escape-proof, which it promptly got out of. And after 3 or 4 iterations, it stayed for, I kept it for about 2 weeks, and then didn't know anything about it, no internet, had one book from the library. It didn't want to eat, so we let it go. But catching newts, which, my mother was always very worried about venomous snakes and toads, and yet I'm catching rough-skinned newts, one of the most poisonous animals on the planet, and sticking them in my pocket and carrying them around. And, if you handle them and lick your fingers, your face will go numb. It's kind of fun. But that was the start. The first snake I bought was a corn snake that was just wild caught adult corn. Had it for about 5 years in this was 1978, 79, big 80-gallon glass aquarium that probably weighed 300 pounds. And I honestly don't recall exactly what happened to him. I don't remember if he escaped or if it was one of those, well, we didn't take care of Jen's pet while she was away, so it ran away kind of things. After that, I really wanted a boa. There were corn snakes and rat snakes. We don't have rats and corns in California. Gopher snakes. And then you're 10 or 11 years old, or actually at the time about 12. What do you know about? Well, there's boa constrictors. So I wanted a boa constrictor. And of course, pet stores were full of wild-caught boas. So finally, after nagging, my dad said, fine, we'll go to the pet store. Went in, looked at the boa constrictors, picked a couple of them up, and my dad decided they looked too thick and too scary to him. So I came home with a neonate wild-caught reticulated python.
Oh,
at 13. And yeah, I had him for quite a while. He finally got given to a friend's father who was a biology teacher when he was about 13, 14 feet long. And yeah. So yeah, that was my intro to the whole thing. At that point, when I turned 16, I started working for an exotic store in Vacaville, California. Lots of snakes. I ended up doing a lot of rehab work. Everything would come in. Everything was, I'd say, this was 87, 88. So probably 98% of what came in was wild caught. Especially to pet stores, because it was just, profit margins. So they wanted them cheap. And, even corn snakes, captive bred corn snakes were kind of pricey. So everything came in wild caught. So it was, well, this looks like it's going to die. Here, give it to Jen. She can take it home and see if she can, resurrect it. If it recovered, I would get basically it was a consignment. I would get a portion when it got sold. Some of them ended up being pets. That's how I got my first king snakes, which I did. Those were the first snakes I bred in a plastic shoebox on vermiculite on top of the refrigerator, because it was nice and warm back there for incubating the eggs. And then I also had a couple of got given a couple of southern pines, and I bred those. And then college happened. I ended up just keeping a few things just as pets. And then I got involved with, kids, and we showed dogs for about 25 years. And then about 12 years ago, I decided, I think I'll, get back into snakes. And, Jay, my husband, said, well, how many do you want? I said, I promise I won't have more than a dozen. That's it, total. Well, 2 rooms and an incubation room so far in the house are completely committed to them at this point. So that's where we're at. And that's only taken me 12 years to completely break his spirit and have us probably have a few more than I really need, but that's okay. So the problem is, it's with anything. I'm sure it happens with you guys. You get something, it's interesting. I can make a new project out of that. Or, that's an unexpected result of that breeding. I guess I have to keep it. And the fact that I like oddballs has kind of kept things growing for a while. So
excellent.
Yeah.
So
why specifically colubrids then, in terms of just the general collection?
I just like them a lot better. They're more, in my opinion, a more interesting range of adaptations, a more interesting range of behaviors. They're all, I've even though I've kept, the boids and pythons, they're not, they're just not my thing. I certainly don't want to step on anyone's feelings, but they're not the brightest. Some of the colubrids aren't either, but some of them, they're definitely a different snake every time you open the enclosure. And, that's part of the, Pituophis there. With between seasonal variation, hormones, I mean, they're a different snake to take care of depending on the time of year. Sometimes they're a little Jekyll and Hyde about it, but that keeps it interesting, and I just really like them. So there we go.
Well, you did quite the negotiation with your father, from going from a boa constrictor to a 13-foot retic. So,
well, it was, at the time I got him, he was probably all of about 18 inches long and very. And my dad looked at the boas and they were thick. They were a heavy-bodied snake. That scared him. The little tiny retic was just a little tiny shoelace, so that was no big deal. I probably could have clued him in at the time. I didn't. So, and being it was a wild caught retic, I definitely learned, a lot about approaching them in a cage, which has paid off over the years. But in the worst bite I ever got, I've gotten two really bad bites from herps. One was a wild caught adult iguana. Nothing that I'd like to go back and deal with again. And the other was a big anaconda. And that one I ended up with some tendon and nerve damage from that one. And after that, I just decided I also didn't want to have to worry about that with the large constrictors either. So it did occur to me that was kind of ironic when I had a bull snake attached to my cheekbone one time for about 20 minutes, because she had wrapped around the hand I was using to hold her from twisting, and no one was home, and so I just sat and waited for her to let go, and she decided she wasn't going to, and by the time she finally did, I looked like I'd been in a bit of a fight. She immediately took the rat that I had been thawing for her, so no problem. But yeah, at least she was small enough to one person by themselves could manage her if she was being a little overly enthusiastic. So
excellent. So what does your we kind of did the introduction broadly, but would you mind explaining to our listeners what your collection looks like now? So which species you have and why they're there, and just kind of an overview, so that when we get into the conversation, people understand your background and your collection currently.
Yeah. Probably about 65% of my collection are bull snakes. Of that, it's about 50-50 on morphs and non-locality and on locality. For the Sei from various places from Canada all the way down to Texas. The rest of the pits are fairly evenly divided between the pine snakes, Melaleucus and Ruthveni. I've got some Cape gophers. I do have some Sonoran gophers, locality ones. I've got Jani, Depii, and the Lineaticolus. And then the rest of the collection is Transpecos rats, some black rats, some greenish rats, intergrades, a few odds and ends. I've got eastern and western fox snakes. And then I've got the oddballs. I've got the Pituophis, the African, all three species that are in collections of Madagascar hognose, and Baruna and Pituophis rusticus there. So a few rear fang. Oh, I have Baron's racers as well. Forgot about those earlier. So yeah. But the bulk of it are the pits, for sure. And they're such a highly variable genus that you even within each subspecies, you get a tremendous amount of variation, depending if they're coastal, if they're valley, which state they're in, what color the soil was. But even in those localities, you get a lot of variation within them. And that's been capitalized on quite a bit. The sand prairie, the black and yellow, or the tricolor from the Illinois and Indiana sand prairies. The reds, which are mostly all descended from a few very, very red animals, but that's certainly not the norm in the of what you'll find crawling around in Texas. So, there's been a lot of line breeding and selective breeding that's gone into that. But you could have easily taken, Kingsville and Colubrid County, their locality is known for being red. Most of the snakes there are not red. And you could easily have bred a very, very high yellow or very, very low contrast animal from it. In fact, I've got a wild caught animal from Kingsville that is a very kind of gold dust colored, low contrast animal. And, so explaining to people when they go, I want a Kingsville, well, they're not all red. So if you're looking for really red ones, well, I do have those, but I also keep other ones around because I have no desire to have their entire family tree look like a potted palm when we're fortunate enough with them as a species, as a subspecies, to be able to get wild caught animals and diversify the genetics a little bit. And it's not a possibility with a lot of rarer animals. Some imports, you're not going to find that. So while we have the opportunity, why not keep the gene pool as spread out as possible? That's not to say I don't have line breeding projects going on, but I like knowing that I've got somewhere to go when they need a refresh, especially locale. So.
No, I think that's very important, especially as we continue down captive reproduction of a number of these species that have been bred in captivity for multiple generations and decades for some of these species, just because you want to unify and add new genetics to those specific collections. Even when you look at AZA collections and things like that, they're not as pure as what a lot of people think they are. To be honest with you, AZA, from my perspective and what I've talked to and even have looked for genetics, sometimes you'll get in there an animal that was just donated from someone as a pet. And it could be, an integrate, it could be a hybrid, but that animal is now within that zoological collection too. So, even talking about locality in animals, I always find very interesting, not because of the fact that every animal is going to look that specific way, but it presents a lot of background and history just from, temperature, things of, cooling cycles, how those animals are actually feeding and growing based upon rain cycles, even too, because prey items might become more abundant during certain times of the year.
Yeah. I see a lot of difference in how they respond to changes in weather, in barometric pressure, time of year between the what are called the eastern bulls, the bulls that are found in the small pockets in Indiana and Illinois, and the bulls from Texas. Very different animals. Not just in appearance, which you can pick up a bull snake, an adult that is from Texas, and know that it's a Texas bull. They've got a shorter head, they've got a heavier body, they've just got a different look, most of them. But the eastern bulls, which have become really popular, starting with the Illinois bulls, and now the Indiana locales are becoming more popular. They are very tuned into changes of weather, especially drops in barometric pressure. I'm assuming that's because, they're next to a Great Lake, and they're also going to have a shorter summer and a shorter growing season. And you don't want to be caught with a full stomach when weather decides to roll off the lake and drop the temperature, 60 degrees. It's a death sentence. I've had, and we don't always get a major drop in temperature when we get barometric drops. We're right next to the Pacific Ocean, which has a lot of contradictions to it. We get we can be 110 during the day and 50 at night with no barometric change. That's because we're getting cool air, cool moist air off the ocean. On the other hand, our air is incredibly dry most of the time. They've a better humidity in Arizona than we do here. So that's a little bit of a challenge too that we can talk about later. But I've had it when the barometer has taken a plunge, and that usually starts happening right around this time of year. Actually, I have had whole clutches of say Lake County bulls from Lake County, Illinois, decide, okay, that's it, we're done, we're not eating. Or Lake County, Indiana, pardon me. We're done, we're not eating. It's the adults are a little more, especially the adults that I've had here in Northern California for either their whole life or most of their life, are a little more resilient to it. But the little guys will just shut off.
Curious.
Yeah.
That being said,
yeah.
How many generations in captivity are these animals that you're noticing this more frequently?
I've noticed it's much more prevalent with animals that are F1, F2. And the animals that are probably F3, F4, at least on one side, are much less likely to have that be an issue. This last 2 years, I was fortunate enough to be gifted a wild-caught Illinois bull, and he's been used to refresh some ones that came from very specific lines that hadn't had an outcross for at least 3 generations. And it's about 50-50 on the little guys in terms of being really sensitive. The Texas bulls, on the other hand, they just eat. And they keep eating. And the only time they don't eat is a female actually laying eggs will probably not eat, and a male looking for females won't eat. Other than that, they're pretty amazing. I was listening to the last podcast you did, and with Clint, and he was saying, that he offers them food sometimes right immediately from taking the eggs. I do that with bulls. Sometimes they haven't even moved out of the position they laid the eggs in, and they'll just reach over and grab it and start swallowing it. And that's the Texas bulls. They don't let an opportunity to eat pass them by. And they'll also eat anything. So birds, rabbits, on a few occasions, roadkill, and well frozen, but roadkill nonetheless. The neighbors run over a squirrel. Well, I'm not going to pass that up. So me in gloves and tongs and in the freezer because I don't want hantavirus. But I've got a few bulls that have been very happy to dispose of anything. And it's another nice thing about them most of the time. Although they're not as consistent of an eating snake in general as they're sometimes portrayed to be when they're marketed to the general public. They're not as simple as that in general. I'm sure you've noticed that with them. I think some of it's hormonal and some of it is they are very tuned into seasonal changes. So
that's really go for it, Matt.
Oh no, that's really why I was curious about the generations in terms of the breeding successions, just because, even working with new species in the hobby, it's not until you get to probably the 4th or 5th generation of breeding in captivity that you really start to see that natural cycling doesn't play as strong of a role.
Right.
For some species, I don't even cool, and they'll breed without cooling or anything. And it's just because of the fact that natural ingrained behavior is lost at that point in time.
Yeah. I would agree with that. So
I don't think it would be called habituation, but you almost start to wonder what is playing a role there.
Yeah. Well, you definitely see with most of the pits, you definitely see most of them, you see a relaxation of temperament as well around the 4th generation. Not all of them. I don't think that the line pines will ever be lovey-dovey and want to be picked up and hugged and cuddled. And the same probably goes for southern pines, which hate all humans on sight and, will scream at you. And I tell people snakes growl, and they go, no, they don't. You pick up a southern pine and go, listen to this. Oh my God, what's wrong with it? No, it's just what they do. That's they roar. That's part of what they do. But with the bull snakes, because that's what I'm selling. When I'm selling snakes and I'm selling them to people who have never had anything other than maybe a ball python or a corn snake. Most of the time, if temperament is their main concern, if they don't want anything that's very defensive, which defensive is sort of inbuilt into bull snakes. It's, it doesn't bother me because I think it should be part of them. But I usually steer them towards something that's maybe het for a few morphs that I have. If they want something that's, pink or red or white, then one of the morphs. But I know that the temperaments on those are going to be, a lot of them come out of the egg very chilled. Probably not a great adaptation for the wild, but they're a good pet bull snake at that point. The Kankakees, the Newtons, the Kingsville Reds, not so much. And the Kingsvilles don't seem to care how many generations they've been bred. They're not. Their chill is just not in their nature. And I have to bite my tongue and cross my fingers and sit on my hands to not type something in fury every time I see someone say, oh, it's all bluff with bull snakes. I've had 3 of them. It's all bluff. They'll hiss, but they don't bite you. It's like, I have a 7-foot red bull that, I hand raised, I've raised since hatching. And, she still tries to kill me on a regular basis. And there's no bluff. She'll hiss, but the first time she strikes, she wants blood. And I don't think she feels that she's done her job unless she makes contact. So the whole, that's not most of them. Most of them calm down very nicely. They make very easily handled captives. They sometimes, by being loud and throwing on the act and bluffing, they do tend to, sometimes scare people. But most of them will calm down with size. Right around right around 3 to 4 feet, a lot of them lose most of their defensiveness. I think something in their brain clicks that we're not a cocktail weenie anymore. We're not a single bite for every predator that's running around. And at that point, they're a little more, they're much more manageable and easy to pick up and handle if you're not comfortable with a snake that, is going to have some attitude and depending on the day and its hormones may just not want to deal with you. So, but yeah, some of the reds are not ever calm. And then of course, Zach, as you know, the line pines have a definite opinion about humans.
It's not good.
It's not good. It's never good. And fortunately for being a snake that can get quite large, they don't, even though they do make contact, I haven't found them to actually want to do any damage.
Yeah.
So it's more like being flicked. Yep. And just told that, I would like you to go away now. And so, it never bothers me with them. So,
yeah, with the line pines, that's something I wanted to talk to. So you segued it for me. That's a species of Pituophis that many people are familiar with, but I would say more people don't know exists. And they're just fantastic animals. They get big. It's a subtropical, high elevation Pituophis that lives, in Central America. I mean, it doesn't get like much cooler than that. How did you go about? They're also somewhat rare in the hobby. You see them occasionally, but I would not say that there's many people producing them, and you definitely are one of the few that does produce them. How did you go about getting your group? And full disclosure, I had a pair that I had purchased for the university, and they were not doing well here because, like you said, they don't like humans, and I have an overabundance of those here at the school. So they moved on to a better place, which was your collection. But can you just? I feel like this is a good place to give line pines a little bit of love. So
I picked up my first pair of adults from two different people. They were odds and ends. They hadn't been able to pair them off. They'd lost interest in them. I picked up one. I was fortunate enough to pick up the female, and she was an older female. She gave me two years of good clutches, but she was up there. She was probably from the first group that had been released by San Antonio Zoo when they bred them. Mm-hmm. And so late teens, early 20s. And unbeknownst to us, she had entamoeba that she had been carrying. Pits are really good at collecting pathogens. Unfortunately, they just are. Mm-hmm. And they're really good at not telling you that they've picked up something that is slowly doing them harm and damage. And, by the time she became symptomatic and we treated her, she already had damage to liver and lungs and probably cardiac. And she lived another 2 years after that. But, and she certainly wasn't a young snake by any means, but I would like to think she could have certainly gone. She looked great on the outside. So, it would have been nice to still have her. But I have, I have a couple of her sons that I'm actually raising up. Thought it was a pair, but we all make mistakes once in a while. And they're not the most congenial little, shoelace to try to see what's going on to sex. And they're small. They are very small hatchlings. And they don't have a lot of muscle. They don't have a lot of fat. I'll be perfectly honest. The first year I bred them, popping them, I just didn't want to hurt anything either. And gotten a little more comfortable with the fact that they're tough little boogers and not nearly that breakable. But so I've got two of her sons, two of her male offspring I'm raising up. And then I had a pair that I purchased as babies that are now they're now adults, and then I've got the pair that came from you, and they're doing fine. So this year I expected to have, I'll be honest, I was hoping to have 3 clutches, and no one ovulated. First year I've had them that no one has ovulated, and I really do think it was our change of weather. Our summers have been becoming increasingly warm and mild. And although I haven't been cooling them as a species, I've been relying on just the natural cycles of the seasons, shorter days, cooler weather, and just cutting their food back in the wintertime. And they were producing, nice clutches and no problem. This coming winter is the first winter that I'll cool them. I probably will leave them on the warmer side of the room. I will probably not cool them for a solid 12 weeks, but I'll probably give them 8 weeks at maybe 60 in the dark. And hopefully that will get everybody back on track, because I basically had 3 adult females and 1 very disappointed male this year. So, but I bet he'll get cool too, because if it's affecting their fertility, it's going to affect his fertility.
Yep.
And so, And that same thing is I'll probably do the same thing with the Pituophis as well. I did get an ovulation this year, but unfortunately, nothing was fertile. So I tried, Zach. I really tried. I promise.
We're going to talk about those guys for sure. Here in a bit. I'm being the dipsadded guy. That's the brown musarana. If you don't know what Pituophis is, and that's on my very short list of absolute wants. I wrote about them in the book that I just finished. And as far as I know, Jennifer is like the only human that might have them in America. Minus one or two that's probably floating out there that nobody knows somebody has. So anyway, but we'll save those for later because we're doing Pituophis now. So, so one question I have is your style of keeping for all these animals. Obviously, you have a large collection. We ask everybody this question. So, do you do primarily racks? If you do racks, what's your setup in the rack? Do you have enclosures? If you have enclosures, what's your setup there? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Just kind of go over your basic husbandry. And if somebody were keeping a Pituophis, maybe give your kind of 2 cents on what they might want to do.
And Zach, just if you don't mind to expand off of that, you mentioned you have 2 rooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you mind talking about both rooms and maybe what's in each room?
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. If you want to talk about adults, just to get that out of the way, most of my adults are in cages. The footprint on the cage is going to be a 4 foot by 2 foot cage. I don't worry. They will use it, but I don't worry too much about vertical height. They'll use it, but they as often as not, given a choice, they'll go down. They like to get up. We're talking about the adults in terms of bull snakes, not gophers. They like a platform to get up on, whether they're basking, whether they're just wanting to get up and hang out somewhere where they can kind of see what's going on. Other than that, and they'll some of the cages have driftwood and things in them. They'll get under that where they can watch what I'm doing, but still feel secure. The lined pines, specifically, I don't really worry about them climbing on anything. I'm sure they probably do in the wild, but for the most part, they would really rather not be seen. And if I walk in a room and they're out, they'll freeze. And they're not an intelligent species by any means. They will wait until they don't think that you are observing them. And then kind of amazing to watch a 7 foot long, heavy bodied colubrid completely silently vanish. If you turn your back and turn back, they're gone. I mean, a bull snake will crash around. Pine snakes, same way. Furniture's flying. Feces are flying. The line pines, they're just gone. So I give all of them have usually at least 2 dry hides, a humid hide, because our air is very dry. We often have single digit humidity here. And that's before you put the air conditioning on. And so, humid hides are absolutely vital. And some species, they're vital regardless, but, the Transpecos are one of them. But even what people would consider desert species, when I say Arizona has better humidity than we do, I'm not in the least bit exaggerating. We have good humidity, well, not good, but moderate humidity other times of the year, but only in patches. And so if anyone ever wonders how wildfires get going up here and just keep going, that's one of the big problems right there. But so the adults are mostly in cages. I do have a couple of freedom breeder, the big boa-sized freedom breeder that are, I think, a 40 by 30 foot inches. Yeah, that would be
Big
nice.
tub.
Yeah, then I wouldn't have to clean. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Just throw some bugs in there and call it good. No, 30 by 40 inches, I think, is the footprint in those, and those work well for adults as well. Hatchlings and juveniles, I usually keep in racks, and to be honest, racks are great, especially for a lot of the pits. They're diurnal and active and very alert, and they stress very easily, which can cause to a lot of issues with eating. First thing someone contacts me, they have a bull snake, they have a pine snake, they have a gopher snake, they want to know why it's not eating. Please send me a picture of your enclosure. And most of the time, it's going to be a glass aquarium. All 4 sides are clear, and they've got, paper towels or aspen and 2 hides in a water bowl. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to work. These guys are absolutely living with the realization they're going to be eaten, or the instinct that they're going to be eaten at any given time. And if I have them and they don't eat, I usually move them to a darker rack in a quieter corner. Worst case scenario, I'll put a piece of newspaper over the top of their hides in the tub in the rack, so they never feel like there's any open sky above them at all. And if stress is a factor in causing them to not eat or not do well, that usually corrects the situation pretty quickly. So some of them don't care, but some of them are, and you can tell right out of the egg, you can tell which ones are going to be a pain in the neck and need a little more security. So right about when they get to 3 to 4 feet, I think I mentioned, a lot of them calm down. And the first few times I had that happen, because I honestly hadn't remembered my original pines doing that, but that's probably because they were southern pines and never calmed down, was that you wonder, is the snake ill? What happened? Is there something wrong with you? You've gone from being absolutely a challenge to pick up without getting struck at, to handle without you hissing the entire time, without you being stressed, to, oh, okay, fine, pick me up, take me around, give me some food, we're cool. And it really does seem with them to be a function of size. And that they get to, at some point, and it makes sense because they are crepuscular and diurnal hunters for the most part, across most of their range. When you're small enough, everything, especially birds, but everything's going to eat you. But you have to be out. If that's the time of day your food's out, that's when you're going to be out. Whether you're moving, even the bulls in particular, a lot of them are burrow hunters. But nonetheless, they still have to get from A to B. And they get to a certain size and they're no longer an easy meal for a hawk. They're no longer an easy meal for everything that comes around. And I think that that's got to be part of it, because I'm not the only one who's made that observation. And I've seen people that, giving advice going, well, just wait till they're 4 feet long. Mine calm down. It's a fairly consistent phenomenon with, I'd say, the northern pines and the sei. Some of them never calm down. Ruthveni never calm down. So, speaking of oddballs, which, there's a snake that really needs, love in the hobby. But they're an intimidating animal. They're also an animal that, as Matt was saying, you've got other subspecies have crept into. They're a very hard one to find animals that would be considered pure. And that you can actually track back and guarantee that. Everybody says that their line is pure. And everyone says everyone else's line is not pure. And it probably ultimately at the end of the day isn't doing them any good that everybody is at each other's throats over that. But that being said, there are a few lines that are, much better documented than others. So, but they're not a friendly snake. And
No.
temperament-wise, they're closer to the line pines. Except the line pines, as adults, I can work in their cage. They never strike at me. They go into their hide. They prefer to sit there and go, "You're not here. I deny your existence." The Ruthveni will happily, try to take your face off if you were to try to climb in there and take a look. But yeah, so.
So with your 2 rooms, back to that.
Oh, back to that.
What's
The adults are in one room. My breeders and my grown adults are in one room, and then I have grow outs and subadults in the other. And that's because like the one room can be just turned off once I get everything cleaned up, or no one's eaten for 2 weeks. I can just turn that room off, and that's sorry. We've got the air conditioning in there. That's we had to commercial air conditioners don't go below 60, so we had to get one that is designed for like a walk-in freezer, and that's what we use in there. We turn it on. It makes quite a sound when it clicks on. It's like okay, and my adults, pretty much the snakes that are in there, they don't leave that room. I take them outside occasionally for pictures, but beyond that, that's kind of a biosecurity thing. They're because unfortunately, pits, like I said, do seem to be very good at picking up stuff. I quarantine things now for almost 6 months. They get a couple of different PCR tests done for various hard to detect and hard to spot bugs that could be problems. And they pass all that, new animals, then they'll move into usually the room that I have the younger animals in. And then after I've got them well established, if they're ready to breed, I'll move them into the room for the breeding adults. So, and I also keep the rooms, like I don't usually cool the room that the subadults are in the wintertime. The reason being, mostly, even though it would be a nice break, is bull snakes and pines will start ovulating at age 2 if you cool them. And I really don't like to breed them until they're about 4. They're also really good, especially some localities, and the pine snakes, at getting egg bound on slugs, because they'll produce incredibly large slugs. The Ruthveni as a adult is going to be a 5-foot long snake. They're not a super long snake. They are heavy bodied, but an average clutch for them might be 4 eggs they look like a ballpark frank. Mm-hmm. 8 to 10 inch long eggs are not uncommonly produced, and they're very rough, not quite as rough as an indigo, but they've got a sandpaper quality to them. And even the slugs they produce are huge. And I just don't want them getting egg bound if it can be avoided. And it'll slow their growth down if they're putting all that energy into egg production. So it's one of the reasons that once they do start ovulating, pretty much you almost can't stop some of them. And, the bulls are probably the worst for that of the whole genus. I've tried not feeding as much. I've tried limiting the amount of light they get during the day so they're not thinking it's summertime. I've tried all of it, and not cooling them. And I turn around and she's laying a clutch of 20 slugs. And so once they start, though, it's really hard. It's hard to give them a year off. I mean, then that's a problem, and it limits their it'll limit their lifespan and their breeding lifespan if you can't get them to slow down. And some of them I can get them to not lay slugs and infertile clutches on their year off. Some of them I can't. And if I don't feed them, they just look skinnier after they're done laying eggs. So they're not hard to breed, is what I'm. Is probably the main takeaway from that. But it's they're not they're definitely can be their own worst enemy in terms of their health with that issue. And I'm sure part of it is because live fast, die young, make lots of babies.
Yeah. So with the pits, you mentioned they're not hard to breed. Can you go over the way you do it, the cycle, the whole thing? And we always, we say this is the way Jennifer does this. There's lots of ways to skin this cat, but you've been a little successful. So it'd be really, not being facetious, you've been really successful. So there's a lot of people out there that love this group of snakes that might just be getting into this for the first time. And can you just kind of go over your way of doing this?
Yeah, sure. I do cool most of my adults. Starting late September, I start cutting their food back a bit. I pretty much cut them off second, third week of September. I stop feeding. I give them a couple of weeks to make sure they're emptied out. And at that point, I'll turn off supplemental heat. It's usually still warm here. So, but where I live, we have a tremendous variation of day to night. We can have a fire weather watch and a frost warning at the same time. We can have, 80, 90 degree temps during the day, and they can drop to 45 or even 35 at night pretty easily. So by turning off the supplemental heat, because the room is fairly well insulated, it won't get cold in there, but it will start, dipping. It naturally, even in the summertime, it naturally dips down into the mid to low 70s. So it'll start, dipping down and then staying cooler during the day without the supplemental heat on, especially because the room is north facing, that my adults are in is north facing. After they've had that for about 10 days, I go ahead, I turn off the lights. Hopefully by then it's starting to get cold enough on its own. If it's not, I turn on the big cooler for the season. And I set that, initially I'll set that probably around 65 and then lower it a few degrees every day or two. And ultimately I try to get them down to right around 50. They're going to be kept around 50 degrees for 12 weeks. At that point, and one of the reasons was because when we dealt with the entamoeba, which was no fun, and unfortunately, probably with the phorid flies, that had been spread to a number of other animals. Once we got that knocked out, and that took a few months of treating and testing to get everyone cleared up. One of the things you find if you research that bug in particular is it doesn't like it above 90 or below 55. So by keeping them cool that first year after we had the issue with the entamoeba, it wasn't the first year we cooled them, it reduced the likelihood of the protozoa being able to reproduce if there was any left in anyone's digestive tract or any other part of their body while they were cooling and while their immune system was at an ebb because it was cold. And they came out of it great. Everyone came out in good shape. Everyone passed, testing for amoebas when they came out. It's been a while. I still test for them, but we haven't seen them for a long time, thankfully. But they came out of that great, and they were in great shape. So that's just been my go-to temp now. I wake them up. I turn on the temp. I turn on the lights first, and I turn off the air conditioning. and then it will, or the cooler, it's not really air conditioning. I turn off the compressor. It will start to then gradually warm up. And then once it gets to about 60, I start turning on the supplemental heat and bring them up over the course of the next week or so after that. Don't like to keep them at that sort of in between temperature for too long because I don't want their immune system struggling. But I also don't want to shock them. So, but we do it. I know people that take 2 weeks to do it. It's mostly by the end of a week at our place. Mostly they're back up to at least room temp, with usually their hot spots turned on. So, or their basking spots turned on. I give them about 2 weeks from the time I turn the lights on. They're usually ready for a meal. Most of them I'll wait until the females shed. They'll usually eat once or twice and then go right into shed. Depends on the body condition they're in. If they haven't shed by the 5th week or so, I'll go ahead and introduce the male anyway, as long as they're in good condition. Because they'll produce such an overabundance of eggs and very large eggs, and because they do seem somewhat prone to, if everything's going right, they're super easy. If things aren't quite right, they can be kind of a nightmare. So if they're in the least bit thin, I don't breed them. If I have a feeling that something's a little hinky with somebody, I don't breed them. Then I try very hard to get them to not ovulate if I can, like as we were discussing. But I had a couple clutches this year. 6 foot plus females, but 24, 26 eggs, and they're all the size of hen eggs, and that's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot. And if they're thin, it doesn't seem, you would think, okay, you're a little thinner, you won't make as many eggs. They'll still go ahead and try to make just a huge clutch. And, egg binding is no fun. And so it's something I try really hard to avoid. The other thing is, if these guys will breed themselves to death given the opportunity, and that's the other reason we try never to breed them more than 2 years in a row. But it's like I said, it's a challenge to then convince them that, hey, you're taking a year off, it's vacation, go put your feet up, get a nice book, relax, have a glass of wine. But they, we do make an effort, because they absolutely have to be. Well, I mean, it's the same with any species, but these guys definitely, if they're not at a good weight, you're potentially asking for a real problem with egg delivery. So
when you put males together, we talked about this with Clint and the rat snakes. Do you see more breeding activity when the females have shed after they've come out of brumation, or do they just get on with it because it's springtime and it's time to go?
It depends on the male. I have a couple males that would breed a garden hose given the opportunity, and if the female's not interested in breeding, they'll still try, and I separate them because they're pretty violent breeders. If you're talking about the pines and the bulls, not uncommon for females to get royally chewed. Top of their head, back of their neck, sometimes halfway down towards their back. And the males will not give them a break. That there's no, hey, we bred, let's separate to our respective corners for a few hours. No. So it depends on the male. I do have some females that I absolutely know have ovulated during brumation. At 50 degrees, they went ahead and brumated, because I brought them out, took one look at them, put the male in there, and they shed and laid eggs probably 5 to 6 weeks after the end of brumation. Doesn't happen very often, but probably maybe one every 2 or 3 years will do that. So in that case, yeah, I mean, if I put them together, there's no interest whatsoever. or he's interested, and she just sits there like a lump and won't even run from him, just basically decides I'm going to play dead, maybe he'll leave me alone, then I'll take him back out. Cannibalism is pretty rare with adult pits, so I don't really worry about that too much. So I'll leave the male in for usually 3 days, then I'll separate them to feed them. Most of the males won't eat during breeding season, though. So some of the older males will, but most of the younger males especially won't eat. They'll eat 2 or 3 times, and actually I feed the males pretty heavily after brumation because once they decide that, they're basically single-minded as a chainsaw at that point. They've got absolutely no interest in food or anything else. Even the line pines that are the males they're so shy. That's the only time I see the males out all the time, and they won't, go and hide when I come in the room, because as soon as they decide there's a girl, they completely, get blinded. They don't care that I could be in the room. There could be an ocelot in the room. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't care. As far as they're concerned, if they smelled the girl, that's it. So, but yeah, usually I leave them together for 3 days, take them, separate them, feed, give the female a couple days to digest. I'll put them back together again until she starts actively refusing him, or he has no interest in her, or she goes back into shed. Eggs, I mean, the big thing, they're big snakes. They're big, heavy-bodied snakes. They have large clutches. I make sure they, I hate to leave a big bowl of water in with them. I'll switch to a smaller bowl of water, try to discourage them from laying eggs in it. I usually give them, they have their human height anyway, but I usually give them whatever box I'm hoping they'll lay in, that they'll lay in as soon as they're done breeding, as soon as she starts to go into her pre-lay shed. Mainly, I want her comfortable. I want her relaxed. I want her hopefully not getting dehydrated. I want her to have a good, easy shed. And if she'll keep eating, I keep feeding. I know a lot of people don't, but I haven't had any problem with that. And it helps prevent them looking like they're completely deflated and awful after they lay eggs.
Do they double clutch? Like
about 50% of them will, yeah. I don't actively try to double clutch them, but it's pretty obvious usually if they're going to or not.
Yes.
So, and if they show signs that they're probably going to, I'll put the male right back in, because they have an easier time. One, they're already having the metabolic cost of making eggs, whether they're fertile or not. But 2, they seem to have an easier time laying fertile eggs than they do laying slugs. So if I think that they're ovulating again, I'll put the male back in with them. And they're usually pretty obvious about it. So not a sneaky species in any way, shape, or genus in any way, shape, or form.
Jennifer, just curious, during your brumation period, do you keep moist hides in with the adults?
I don't keep moist hides in with them. I do keep a water bowl in with them.
Okay.
The reason I don't keep moist hides in is I tried that one year, and I had a few that kind of tried to camp out. And maybe they needed the humidity, but on the other hand, they didn't come out of brumation in the kind of shape I was hoping they would. They didn't have anything obvious in terms of an upper respiratory infection, but they definitely, I got the impression that with probably evaporative effect in there, they had gotten a little too chilled. So we've talked about putting a humidifier in the room in the winter, but I haven't seen any real evidence that they're having an issue with dehydration during the wintertime without humid hides. they absolutely will come out and drink everything. And they hiss at me when I go in there to check on them. It's a very slow, quiet, slow motion hiss, but it's a hiss. And I've definitely seen them drinking in the middle of the whole thing. So they seem pretty good at managing themselves.
So
Yeah,
when
go
for it, Matt.
Oh, go ahead, Zach. No, you're good. So this was something that I've really kind of sparked an interest in over the past couple of years, especially hearing from a number of keepers, even with heavier bodied rat snakes, is kind of the egg bound issue.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's, I don't know, from being an anatomist, I found it very interesting in terms of how fat accumulates on the inside of reptilia. And over the past 2 to 3 years, I've actually been decreasing the amount and size of prey items that I offer my animals. Because I've seen issues, even with animals trying to formulate a second clutch for the season and having egg binding issues just off of infertile ova. In terms of your feeding and prey of what you actually offer your animals, could you go into a little bit about that, and if you supplement or provide vitamins or calcium with the animal?
Sure. I feed most of the adult bulls and pines. I feed on medium-sized rats. A couple of reasons. One, they're certainly an easy meal for them to get down. Two, they're not as fatty as the large rats are. And if you've ever, for whatever reason, skinned or taken apart the large rats, they have a tremendous amount of fat. So I'd rather feed, if I have with my really big, like the really big Texas bulls, some of which can be, easily over 7 feet, and as big around as a water bottle. I'd rather feed them 2 medium rats than, 1 large rat. I have a couple of them that would probably happily eat 2 large rats, but they're kind of grounded on that. I do also feed day-old chickens. I like them because they're not super fatty. I don't like cleaning up after, but I do, the snakes do like them quite a bit. And I do feed quail. Same thing though, younger quail, because the really big quail tend to be just really fatty. And they're also, even for a large bull snake, it's a big stretch to get over the hips and everything on a large quail. I feed I feed my males every 10 days for the most part when I'm trying to ramp them up for breeding season or put weight on them after. I feed the females about once a week. I do know people that feed every 4 to 5 days. I haven't seen that that's necessary. When I say I want them in good body condition, I don't want them fat, but I do want them carrying enough reserves that they're going to still have something to draw from after they've made all those eggs and then are pushing them all out. So that hopefully they've got the energy to do it all in one sitting. I used to try to get them heavy before I put them down for brumation. I don't anymore. I try to make sure that they're in good weight and in a healthy body condition, but they're not going to be burning any calories while they're cooled. That's kind of part of the whole point of it. So as long as they're in a healthy condition, they have good muscle tone. I think that's much more important than actual weight. People always ask, well, what does your bull snake weigh? Well, I don't care what my bull snake weighs. I care what it looks like. I care when I pick it up, does it feel muscular? Is it active? Is it, does it feel strong? If it feels like a big squishy thing, that's no good. If I pick it up and it feels light to me, or I can feel its spine too much, then you can feel the ribs, below the vent. You can, not the ribs, but the side of the vertebrae below the vent, you have a problem. So, I want them at a happy medium going into brumation. Coming out, I know the females, they're not going to get fat coming out of brumation. Because everything that they take in is going to go into egg production. So I'll go ahead and they get to eat once a week. If they're desperately hungry still, I'll give them a second small meal at the same time. Bull snakes are adapted and selected to eat multiple prey items. That's kind of the classic thing. They go down, gopher burrows and prairie dog burrows and things, and slam all the prey items up against the side of the burrow and crush them. And if I give a bull snake 2 frozen thawed rats, it'll slam one up against the roof of its enclosure or the side of its enclosure with a body coil and pin it there while it's swallowing the first one. And I'm pretty sure if I gave them 4 or 5 small things, they would do it with all 4 and 5 and not be happy until they had them all smashed. So I don't worry about giving them multiple items. That never seems to be an issue. I do supplement the females once or twice with calcium prior to laying. I especially do that if it's a second clutch for that season. And I don't want to overdo it. I don't want them becoming dependent on an outside source of calcium. I don't want that screwing up anything like that. I don't know if any research has been done in that regard. It's an issue in, we showed them bred dogs for 25 years. And you don't supplement with calcium with pregnant bitches ever. And the reason for that is that their body, the hormonal mechanism that tells their body to pull calcium out of their bones and out of their muscles when they need it for milk production, will become quiescent if they have too much available calcium in their diet. And it can lead to issues with milk fever. I have no idea if reptiles have anything remotely like that, but they definitely need calcium for good muscle contraction to move eggs out and to lay eggs. And, so I'm hesitant to overdo it. I'm more likely to supplement them if I think they really need it badly after they're done laying for the season. They'll get a supplement with every other meal of calcium until they go down for brumation. But pre-lay, I may dip the rat's nose in calcium powder, get it damp and dip it in calcium powder, or bird, or roll it in calcium powder. Once, maybe twice. It just depends. So
your feeding rate for the neonates and the juveniles that you're growing up, how does that differ from what you're doing with adults?
It really doesn't, because I'm not rushing them to breed at age 2 or 3. I really want the saying with bull snakes and pine snakes is 3 years old and 6 feet is when they're ready to breed. But a lot of them aren't mature at that age. A lot of them, they may be 6 feet long, but they're still really slender. They're not fully mature. So a lot of them I don't breed till age 4. I haven't seen, based on family history, I haven't seen that if it takes them until age 4 to get up to full size, or age 2 to get to full size, I haven't seen that, anyone's been stunted. It's the same thing as when we're talking about, when I said I don't weigh my snakes unless I have to medicate them or something. But if they're growing and, shedding every 2 to 3 weeks, which is what baby, pits will do for the most part, if they're got good muscle tone, if their body condition doesn't look overly thin, then I figure they're getting enough calories. I used to feed every 5 days. I now feed every 7. So I don't with those. I mean, it depends on the species. The little Pituophis hatchling, I mean, she eats every 3 to 4 days. Well, she's a yearling now, but she eats every 3 to 4 days. And, I think, and my barons eat more frequently as well, and I know falsies do. And, but The bulls don't actually seem to. I just haven't seen that it's necessary to have food in front of them all that often. So once a week. If I want to put weight on them, then I'll short. If I have one that needs it, I'll shorten it to every 5 days. I just move up in prey item size as they grow, and they grow rapidly, and they grow incredibly rapidly even on that schedule. So,
if they're growing, that's probably the best.
Yeah,
one of the better schedules than pounding them full of protein and fat, so that they can grow but also get fat.
Well,
you don't want them doing that at all.
You could. Most bull snakes, pines are little. You can easily overfeed pines. Most bull snakes, you can power feed. I mean, they're amenable to it, is what I'm saying. And I certainly know people that have gotten them up to 5 feet in 1 year. I just don't find that necessary. I'm not going to be breeding them for several more years after that. So
with your feeding schedule, if there was like an average size for a yearling, a year after it's hatched, what would the length of that animal
about be? 3.5 to 4 feet.
Okay, cool.
So, there's a huge variation in the size of hatchlings with sei in particular. Some of them are very small, not much bigger than a black rat hatchling, and then, some of them are pushing up there into the same sort of size you would see with the southern pines and the ruthveni, that can easily be 16, 18 inches, 20 inches long and ready to eat pocket gophers right out of the. But most of them are not as large as the pine snake hatchlings. Most of the, Catenifer are just not as large as the pines are. So this is the first year, this year, it's been interesting. This year it was first year we produced Depii. And when I had been sent babies when they were little, they were tiny. They were corn snake size hatchlings. And I was really pleased with these guys. They were, on the smaller end of the spectrum for what I would consider for a sei hatchling. And I talking to people who've, looked at them and said, oh, they're small. Like, I've had Depii that were much larger than that. I'm like, okay, cool. But where were they when I was trying to get them? Because people were sending me these little things, and I'm going, oh, what do I feed you? So, but they've been interesting too, because there's another subspecies in the genus that, like the lined pines, were much more widely available at one point in time, but now haven't been imported for a long time. And I'm sure inbreeding depression is definitely nipping at their heels currently. So, and that's an issue, and it's an issue with anything where the gene pool is limited. And I think that, the lined pines are a good example. They haven't had an influx for a long time. I think they're still in relatively good shape. I think it is paramount that only the best and the fittest of the hatchlings are probably bred, however. They're not a species that when I've had them hatch, most of them have thankfully been quite vigorous. They're not a species, I think, that we do ourselves any favors trying to keep them all alive in. And that goes for most animals, to be honest. But I think that when you have such a limited gene pool, especially with the, things like the Depii, the ruthveni, the Lineaticolus, we don't do ourselves any favors by going above and beyond, because you never know if that animal's going to be bred. You never know what's going to happen with it. That's I don't know. I got off on a tangent there pretty badly.
That's okay.
but it's true. I mean, I'm just really, with the line pines, fortunately, most of them that I've hatched, I haven't seen very much in the way of kinks. I haven't seen much in the way of defects. I have seen a fragility, though, as they age, especially with the males. There's twice as many males in a clutch as females, and everyone who's ever bred them will tell you that. And they have huge clutches of tiny, tiny little hatchlings. I think some of the zoo clutches were like 45, 50 eggs. And they're almost always, that's dropped off, and that's probably because they're now on their F4 and F5 generation. But they're tiny. I mean, they're, compared to most of the other members of the genus, they're very small hatchlings. And, very lightly built. 2/3 of them are almost always males, and nobody wants males when you're selling baby male line pines. Everyone wants females. I get 4 or 5 contacts a year minimum, probably more. People that have lost their male, can't find an adult male. And I'm not sure if it's a natural, just that it's one of the reasons they have so many offspring and so many extra males is because they're just maybe not quite as robust. Is the only thing I can figure. The ones I have here, they don't grow as quickly as the females, that I will say. So far, so good. They've been healthy so far. But, I know a number of people that lost their males right around age 2 or 3. And,
That's weird.
And it may also be that something deleterious came in with the very limited number of adults that are, the foundation for them in the U.S. And so that's a real possibility. And now, as far as I know, you can't get them from Europe right now either because they're, with the crackdown on species that were smuggled out of Mexico, unless you have, I talked to someone I have exported them to Europe. I talked to somebody in Europe about getting some back that were, half his line, which is an unrelated line to the U.S. line. And we were not able to we were told we wouldn't be able to get permits for them at this time, because you can't prove, no one has the paperwork to prove that they were legally collected, that their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents were all legal animals from Mexico. So it's a problem,
Jennifer, just talking about that a little bit in terms of high male ratios, in terms of your hatching success. Do you run multiple males with a single female by any chance?
No, with the line, this is the only time I have the high male ratio has been the line pines. And I've only ever had one breeding male at a time with them, so no.
Well, and the only reason I asked that is I've noticed over the years, even too, where I'll have real high sex ratios. And I don't know how well this plays in evolution, maybe for some of these different species, but I've noticed that you'll see competition, not with having two males in there at the same time, but the breeding behavior too as well. And you start to wonder, at least from my perspective, about sperm competition for fertility even too as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just something that, you saying some things, I just kind of had to ask the question.
Oh, no, I've only ever had the one male. I at a time that was old enough and in condition to breed with the line pines. I've occasionally sparred bull snakes briefly just to try to get. I would never leave them alone. I'm quite sure they'd do damage to each other. Most of the time it's been pretty congenial, but it definitely seems to encourage someone to get off the stick and start courting the female more. I tried it one time with Trans-Pecos, and that was a complete mistake because they immediately just latched right onto each other. They were pushing on each other, and I kind of thought, okay, I'll let you push on each other for a few minutes. And the next thing I knew, they were both had a hold of each other by the back of the neck and were, rolling around. And they have considerably long teeth for their size, and getting them off each other was not a whole lot of fun. So lesson learned, don't put two male Trans-Pecos together during breeding season, but they're a little bit weird compared to every other colubrid on the planet because they've got, 2 or 3 more chromosomes than everything else does. So yeah. So who knows about them? Dropped from Mars or somewhere. This year we had a minor disaster in that one of my sons was helping me with I have speckled hogs from the Madagascar, but I'm not even going to try to say the scientific name. Starts with a G. I can spell it, I can't say it, but they, I had said, okay, put the shed from that male in with that guy. And he didn't hear the shed part of it. So he put the one male in with the other.
Oh, man.
And I turned around just in time to see the two of them hood up. And the next thing I knew, one had the other by the back of the neck. And, and it tried to take off, dragging the first one, and ended up with by the time we got them separated, the one had probably maybe a 0.5 centimeter gash all the way down to muscle across the top of its hood. So they use those rear fangs for more than just injection, obviously. And I put on my list, do not get bit by speckled hog, if at all that genus is definitely, they're spunky.
Yeah. Well, we can transition over to them real quick if you want to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is with I think we've probably covered pits because they're not, once they're hatched, most of them eat. I mean, that's the great thing about them. You put food in front of them, most of them eat. I mean, the most I ever have to do is occasionally offer a boiled or a washed pink, a frozen thawed pink, and that's it. And that's maybe 1 out of every 40, so or 50. So I think if people get to the point where they hatch, that's one thing I should say though.
Yeah, go for it.
They're incubating them is like everything to do with anything with snakes, easy till it's not. I would say that the one thing with them is they are more sensitive to the temperature fluctuations. They do very well at a lower temp. I incubate at 76 to 78 degrees. My eastern bulls and northern bulls will go a little shorter, probably because shorter summers. Everyone else, bull snakes, pine snakes, the depii, gophers of various sorts, all go anywhere from 65 to 82 days at those temps. The larger the egg, the longer they take. And some of the reds lay, huge eggs, and they just take longer to finish cooking. But the only time we've had issues with a lot of, and I should also say they don't tolerate being overly moist. So I keep my substrate a little bit drier than I do for pretty much everything else. But the only time we've had problems with kinks or significant die-off in the egg has been when Pacific Gas and Electric has cut our power for various reasons, or there's been a power failure during the summer, and we've had temperature spikes. And they just, the rat snake eggs sitting right next to them, the Trans-Pecos eggs sitting right next to them are fine. But then I'll end up with losing eggs, or we'll end up with a kink tail. And so speaking with other people that, some of which have never took any time off like I did, and have been doing them for 40 years consecutively, everyone seems to agree cooler's better with the genus when you're incubating. And so that would be my big caveat there. But once they're hatched, let them shed, throw food at them, and they're good to go. I mean, they're pretty easy. So, yep.
All righty.
Oddballs?
We'll head to oddballs.
Yeah.
So there's two that I'd like to talk about, but we're going to go to the Mad Hog. Or sorry, I say Mad Hog. Leoheterodon.
I say Mad Hogs too. So yeah, it sounds cool.
Various types of Madagascar hognose snakes. I do want to throw something out there right now because this drives me a little bit crazy. Within the hobby, there's this idea that those snakes are just a giant version of hognose snake that are closely related to our hognose snakes. And just so everybody understands, they're in a completely different family now.
Yeah.
The Lampropheidae. They are actually more closely related to cobras and mambas than they are to hognose snakes. Hognose snakes are in the family Dipsadidae, and those two families on the snake family tree are what we call disparate. They're nowhere close to each other.
And they act like it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but this whole group of African or Madagascar snakes, that genus, it's become, I think, somewhat, it's seeing kind of a renaissance right now. It seems like the blondes, the speckleds, and the straight giants or Madagascar hogs, whatever you want to call them. Just in the past 3 years, people really want them. And you've been successful with them. So I know that you've bred the giants.
Yeah.
Have you produced anybody else yet?
Not yet.
Still working on our groups.
No, not yet. The blondes I have came in very poor condition. I got them cheap, and I picked up 6 of them on the grounds that, hey, maybe half will survive, and that's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. And 2 are doing really well, and I would say are firmly established. And the smaller female has finally, stopped self-repair and is now growing. Because, importation is not easy on animals. It's not. I mean, especially, I should say wild-caught importation's not easy on animals. And even if everything goes perfectly right, you're talking a big change and the stress of capture and transport. And then you're talking about new water, just a whole new, microbiome that they have to get used to. Everything's new, everything's different. And, they've taken it'll be at least, I don't think they'll be ready this coming season. I think maybe 2023. My speckleds are in great shape. I think that they're definitely on an old world south, and southern hemisphere schedule. And so if they breed, I would expect to see them breed this winter. But I've got weight on them. The male is very much would like me to not get near his females. He'll come out and periscope up and even hood up at me sometimes, which when you talk to people and they're the really calm one out of the 3, species. And I always wonder with a lot of these species if that reputation is based on animals that are subpar, that are not fully healthy. Because, now that they're healthy, there is very little about them that is calm or chill or mellow or anything else. They're the least. Yeah, I don't worry about getting chewed on by them if I decide to pick them up with my hands the way I do with the blondes. The blondes are like racers. They will happily grab you and gnaw on you. And they act very much like racers. But very alert and but the speckleds are even so. He's hooded up and taken a few swipes at me just for getting into his territory. So I'm hopeful maybe this winter he'll feel inspired. That I'm trying to make it feel like, Madagascar in
Mm-hmm.
their abode, but we'll see if that's successful.
Are they set up in cages, or are they in a big rack setup? Because I've heard
the speckleds and the blondes are in a big rack setup.
Yes.
Yeah. The giants I recently moved to the Applegate style cages.
Oh, cool.
And they seem, it's early days yet, but they seem pretty happy in there. And before that, they were in just a regular 2x4. And before that, they were in a very large tub. And
you're keeping them in communities?
I'm keeping them in pairs. Okay. The speckleds are in a trio for the purpose of breeding. I had the females separated, and I had them all separated, and then I've introduced them all. And so far, that seems to be working. Everyone's eating, weight's good, no one seems stressed. Talking to a few people about the giants, they said they do better if you keep them together. They'll eat better, they'll do better, they'll breed better. I had them separate when I was getting them established, in part because I was having to worm them continuously. They had subcutaneous, probably, I'm guessing, tapes, larvae. They had an assortment. All three species did. They all had an assortment of protozoa and intestinal worms. And I just really didn't want them sharing it back and forth for, 2 years. So it was easier to keep them separated for at least, it took almost a year to kind of get everybody cleaned up. My kids got very good at holding, angry, crotchety rear fang snakes while I carefully extracted, larvae from under their skin. Not my favorite thing to do, but they also don't need to have that burden. And they had quite a few. And I think that one of the reasons we're seeing a renaissance in them is because they suddenly became rare. Mm-hmm. I think they used to be imported all the time, and they were cheap. And they came in, and every, like the place in Las Vegas, Exotic Pets in Las Vegas, always had giants, and usually had blondes and speckleds as well. And, if you went online, you could find them. I mean, aquarium stores had them because I guess they got all of their fish from Madagascar, so they just picked up some snakes too. Now, all of a sudden, they're hard to get. And, I'm happy to have the ones I have. I had been meaning to pick them up forever. My oldest pair I've had for 5 years now. Wish I'd taken advantage of when they were cheap and plentiful and picked some up, 10, 12 years ago. But, I figured, I have time. They're always around. But it's really sad and an indication of why imports are not for everybody, that there aren't just a ton of them around. The numbers these guys were imported at, it's like that there should be, and for the decades that they came in on and off, there should be a lot of them, even if they were just casually, accidentally bred. But you just don't see them, and I think the fact that wild-caught imports are not easy to establish in some cases, many cases, is a big part of the issue and the problem. And, somebody really probably at some point needs to write a how-to guide.
Don't know anybody doing that.
No. Gee, hi, Zach. Or Matt, are you doing one?
No.
For the Hognose book that'll be done this time next year. I was talking with Bob Ashley, and he has requested that I have the other Hognoses as a chapter. So that's part of the reason why I'm getting the pair from you. Is I've dabbled with them before, but I'm going to be doing a great big chapter in that book on Madagascar, all three taxa, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just gathering information.
I'm still here. Okay. Well, the one thing I will say is when you're saying they're more closely related to mambas and cobras, have fun with these babies.
Yeah,
you might want to use hooks.
I got hooks and I have
Yeah.
gloves. I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah, no, I did take a pretty good chew off of one of the little guys. And the adults, I just pick up. They'll huff, they'll puff.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found is as long as you're not making them feel restrained, other than the occasional huffing and puffing, the giants haven't been haven't even really taken a swing at me as the adults. But the babies are more than happy to bite the ever-loving heck out of you. I've been charged a few times going into tubs. I love them; they're fun, but it does hurt. It's the chew I got. I'm not into letting something chew on me for 10, 20 minutes. Was probably 10, 15 seconds. It felt longer than that. They've got those teeth are big. But it bled for probably a good hour. It bled quite a bit for a good hour. And I had swelling, I had bruising, and it felt like being hit by a yellow jacket or a wasp. So I would use gloves and hooks personally. I've gone to that with the little guys because they're fast. They're hard to get a hold of. They're a smart enough species that I'm pretty sure they're still resenting the fact that I had to assist feed them for a while, and they did not love it. Speaking to the breeder in Canada that's produced them a few times, I'm blanking on his name right now, but I can look it up for you if you like. He, after producing them and going through the same thing I did with please eat, and getting this one to eat this and this one to eat that, and it taking forever. Anything that he has that eats between the time they hatch and when he puts everything down for cooling, he keeps awake all winter. If they don't eat, he cools them. And he's had very good luck with them coming out of that and eating when they come out of it, which I was really glad to find out because that's what I'll be doing from now on. But, when I was looking, I was like, okay, I've got eggs. Okay, these look like they're fertile. Okay, they look like they're probably going to hatch. I was looking it up, and most of what you find online is just, oh, they eat everything.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Not true.
No, they don't.
That's not true at all.
Not at all. The adults, I haven't had too much trouble. I know you've had some trouble with some of the ones you've gotten. They're a snake. But it's the same thing I do with anything I get that's wild caught or high stress. It's what I'm doing with the Pituophis. I go into the room they're in because they're actually in. We have a disused bathroom, and that's where I've actually got the Pituophis. I go into the enclosure as little as possible.
Yep.
I almost never, and I have them in racks, close-sided racks initially, just to get them. I make them feel like there's nothing is going to come up on them. Now they're in a nice big cage, and they've got UV, and they've got the underneath to go into, and they're all settled. But they still don't love me. But the Pituophis are interesting because I'm not sure a 2x4 foot cage is going to work for them. I may end up going with a 6 foot cage. Now that they're feeling really good, they're a lot like the red beak snakes, or they're like all the beak snakes. They look like something from Attack of the Mole People. And I was thinking, this is going to be this shy little thing. It's got little eyes. They're always up. They're always periscoping. They're very alert. They will charge right at your face. They puff out their cheeks and gape their mouth. Their inside of their mouth's jet black. And they charge right at your face and try to bang you as hard as they can with that rostrum. And it does hurt. But, I'll reach, but, they'll, if I'm working with them or cleaning up after them, they get furious. They come charging out of their hides and come right at you. Then they retreat. As soon as they make contact, they flee. And I say furious, but they're not. I'm sure they're actually just quite terrified that they're going to be, eaten and they have nowhere to hide. One did make contact with me with its teeth, and it felt like being attacked by soft Velcro. So they're not exactly a big threat, but the entire once they realize that I'm in the room, the entire time I'm in there, they thrash. They come up and they body slam against the front of the enclosure. They're trying very hard to scare you off. And, my understanding is that their reputation across most of their range is that they're deadly because they act like a mamba. They chase, they open their mouth, the inside of the mouth's jet black. They act like they're not afraid of a thing. And I think they're actually terrified of everything. But they, that seems, I guess if you ask people who've grown up, within their range, a lot of them, oh yeah, they're very venomous. No, they're completely harmless, but they don't act like it. So just so that they don't hurt themselves, I may end up putting them in a,
that's cool.
Having to invest in some 2x6 foot cages. And did you find anything out about them, Matt? When you
know what, most of the papers that I even came across were natural herp surveys. There wasn't very much out there. The animals that I had bought were actually in pretty poor shape. I ended up putting one of the 3 down almost immediately after acquiring it, after I took it to the vet. And the other 2, their pathogen load was just beyond recovering.
Yeah. So, but just even trying to find out anything about their natural history.
I can send you the papers.
That would be great. I found a few, but they were less than helpful in general. But no, they've turned out to be a lot more interesting than I even expected, because they definitely have, I knew, I got them in 3 different, I got 1 male, then another male, then 2, then a male and 3 females. And they all came in very quiet. They all kind of perked up and, would give a little bit of a threat to me here and there. They were all willing to eat live, like mouse fuzzies and rat crawlers. I don't like to worm things immediately. I like to let them settle in for a few weeks. They looked in good condition. Figured they had something. All of them took a plunge, probably about, it didn't matter which group they were in, right around the 3 to 4 week mark. After that little honeymoon period, they'd eaten a few times, drank like typical, and then all of a sudden got quiet. It's like, okay, well, no, we're not gonna wait on this. I lost the 1 female. These guys, they had amoebas. They had, 2 different kinds of coccidia. They had worms. They had everything. I actually hit them with humitin because it's great for amoebas and protozoas, the perimycin, and also treated them with a broad spectrum, an anticoccidial, and then wormed them at the same, and then wormed them. I hated to do it all, but they had everything, and I didn't want one thing to get an upper hand. And like I said, we lost the 1. The others bounced. It took about a month to kind of right the ship to the point where I wasn't worried I was going to walk in there and they were going to be dead. And now they're you can definitely tell a difference in their muscle mass. They've put on muscle. And every single one of them hates me, or is terrified of me, depending on how you want to look at it. But just their instinct is to see a threat and charge right at it, and they crack me up. So I love it because, I don't want them to hurt themselves thrashing around, but I love the fact that they feel good enough to do that, to act like complete and utter, crazy psychopaths. And I'm sure, based on what I've seen them do to me, their whole thing is, I will charge you, I will hit you, you will think you've been bit, and while you're trying to figure out what the heck happened, I will try to get as far away from you as possible, because the second they hit you, they're turning around in the air and they're on their way to the back of the enclosure. And I think they'd very much like to be 100 yards away from me. And of course, they can't get that far. So the Applegate style enclosures may be a good one for them because they'll be able to get underneath and have a bolt hole. So, that may be something. But yeah, I wasn't expecting that when I got them, I wasn't expecting to have this sort of little live wire, high energy. They're not constrictors. They act like racers. They grab it. I've seen them fling food against the sides of the enclosure to kill it. And then they crush it with that rostrum. So they're pretty funny. So I hope I can figure them out and get babies because I think they'll be the cutest things ever. Cutest, most orderiest things on the planet. So, but I still worry about them. And it's the same with anything I get that came out of the wild. I still worry that there's some time bomb, that you haven't found all of. I have a friend that was one of the few people in the state that legally still had a Santa Cruz island gopher that they'd had before, and they had grandfathered in. And when they lost him, he just started losing weight. They opened him up, and I think they said probably from pinworms. He'd had an infection probably as a much younger snake. They'd wormed him, when they got him. But, it had left scar tissue everywhere, and he'd gradually developed adhesions, and he was probably only 14 or 15 when they had to euthanize him. And, they can easily live, most of that genus can easily live into their mid to late 20s. So, and he took excellent care of him. But, so I always worry about him. So, I think there is a little bit of a push and a need with anything wild caught, if you want to establish it, to try to get eggs on the ground. Not so fast that you're risking their health in terms of their condition, but before whatever might be lurking in the back that you don't know about. No,
I agree 100%. I mean, really, that's the start of a project. Is that first F1 generation. It's really not the wild caught animals. It's really getting those F1 animals, establishing those in the hobby, and then pursuing those further on long run to establish a new species.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And and especially while there's still an opportunity. I mean, right now, I go on the assumption that most of the wild caught Madagascar and Africans and Asians, and you might be able to speak this. I go on the assumption that those animals are all, and maybe it's an illusion on my part, but I hope that each one of them is unrelated to each other. I hope they were caught across. I'm hoping I'm lucky I didn't get two siblings. I hope I got the ones that were, are barely in the same subspecies, from opposite ends of of their range, because you never know when those imports are going to stop, and you never know how hard they're going to be. And right now I know she's got eggs. I don't know if they're fertile or not. I've got another giant mad hog gravid right now. She's just going into blue. So last year I got a clutch of 11, all fertile, all hatched, all lived. This year I got a clutch of slugs so far, a clutch of 7, of which 3 are good. And now this girl. So, you can't, last year, after last year, I was thinking, well, maybe I've got it figured out. No. I mean, no, not at all. No. I mean, it'll take 3 or 4 generations before, I know what worked last year, but it may have just been luck, and so I'm hoping this other girl is fertile. I hope her eggs are fertile, but I don't know. And find out.
Yep. We'll find out.
Yep.
This has been fantastic.
Okay. Sorry about my voice and rambling and going off on
your voice.
Wild tangents and everything else.
That's what the podcast is for. Present new ideas to people from people who have experience like you. So thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with us about Pituophis and oddballs.
thank you for being there to take all the oddballs from me and Matt.
Oh, no worries, man. I love my oddballs. That's pretty much why I'm in this.
Al, maybe Pituophis next year.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe.
And we'll have you back on because we got to talk about that. Brown musaranas, look them up, people. They're a massively underrated snake.
Yeah, they're cool.
But yeah, so if people want to get a hold of you, how would you recommend they go about doing that?
They can just look me up on Facebook. Getting my Instagram up and running, getting a business page up on up and going and all is in the works, but hasn't happened yet. So best thing is just to, I don't have a list of exactly what I have available, but in terms of, the Pituophis, if I don't have it, I probably know who does. Even if it's the weird, the strange, the oddball localities, I know most of where all that can be found. For the other stuff, if anyone has any insight on any of these species or has more information on them, I'd sure love to talk to anyone about any of the oddball stuff, because hey, that's the only way we're all going to figure it out, and
gotta talk.
I want those F3 and F4 generations and down the line. So, well, it's great. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We've enjoyed it. This has been fun.
All right. Take care. Yep. Sorry.
So you can find me at Zach Loafman on Facebook and Dr. Crawdad on Instagram. And where can they find you at, Matt?
You can find me on the Sarpamitra page and Instagram with Sarpamitra USA.
All righty. So this is the end of episode 3. And thank you all for listening to another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. Have a good one.